Hello and welcome to Glitch Cube, we're a gaming podcast, and each week we take a deeper look into the art of video games. As always, I'm Christian.
I'm Chris.
And welcome back, everybody. Thank you guys for joining us once again as we dive further into the world of games. So this week we are going to be venturing into the world of Metrovanias. This is a very, very popular style amongst gamings, and if you've never heard of it, well, I don't know what you're playing, man. Like, what list are you looking at? They're everywhere. Since the dawn of gaming, it feels like Metrovanias have been around. Of course, they were not always called that, right? Obviously, the name is a mashup of Metroid and Castlevania. For those of you who did not know that, I think it's kind of obvious, but, just wanted to do our due diligence and kind of throw a little bit of education at people before we dive into just some games that we really enjoyed in that genre itself. But Metrovanias are pretty interesting, and I think it's a very niche kind of group of people that really, really enjoy them. They're always fun to play, but for those who really dive in and just kind of get absorbed into these titles, they can feel a little daunting, right? There's a lot of backtracking, which is synonymous of Metrovanias. But maybe the definition itself isn't super clear on what it is. So I figured maybe we can spend a little bit of time in the beginning trying to sum up what a Metrovania is to us, and maybe kind of exactly what does it mean to be a Metrovania. So in your world, in your own words there, what would you classify as a Metrovania? How would you fully describe it? Is it just backtracking? Is it just a collection of abilities? What do you think?
I feel like it always has to have platforming. I feel like a lot of people will throw the Metroidvania term at a game, and especially for 3D ones, they'll be like, "Oh, it's a Metroidvania," but it's like there's not a lot of platforming, right? For me, platforming is a big thing. I would say that's probably 50% of the term. And then the other half, it's basically revisiting areas you've been to with powers that you unlock in the game. And I know that a lot of people say, oh, well, adventure games do that too, where say you get a new gun that you can break down a wall and now you can see it. But the thing about Metroidvanias is that it goes everywhere, right? And you can almost always, you never have a part of the map shut off, especially in really traditional games in that genre. The map is always open for you to explore, for that reason, because now you have some new power and also secret rooms. I feel like those two are really the bread and butter. And if it's missing one of those features, it's very hard for me to say oh, this fits into that versus just being either platformer or, action adventure game. What about you?
Well, I have to agree 100%, right? If a Metrovania, if a game does not have platforming, I feel like it's really hard to call it a Metrovania. I feel like that those two really go hand in hand, and I'm trying to think of what were Metrovanias called before that term was coined. Was it just a platforming adventure game? Is that kind of how they were classified?
I think so. I mean, kind of like Mario, right? Mm-hmm. Side-scrolling platformer.
Okay. Yeah, I always think of them as giant map. I can go around everywhere, kind of like Dark Souls-y, right? Where you can just kind of travel wherever you want to. You might not be at the right level or whatever it is, or maybe you don't have the right thing to fully traverse the area, but you can still dip your toe in certain spots. I always find that as a way to classify a Metrovania. And then for me, it's the abilities. And usually the abilities are pretty much the same. When it goes to, you always get some sort of traversal ability, whether it's a dash or a double jump or something like that, a grappling hook, right? There's always something like that to reach higher areas. And then just bigger, better weapons always help. But your weapons also become keys in a sense. Similar to Metroid itself, right? Like there's certain doors that are missile doors. So you have to hit it with a missile versus a blaster door, or maybe there's different types of blasters that you need to get through different types of doors, right? Like I always see that the weapon upgrades are not just weapons. So Metrovanias, I feel, are very, what's the word? I guess resourceful in the abilities that they give the players, because they almost want the player to freely explore and not hold their hand at all. I feel like that's another big thing with Metrovanias, is that there is not much hand holding in these games. You just get thrown in and you're supposed to kind of just play with the tools that are provided with you, because you never know exactly what you can do with them, right? Like for instance, with Hollow Knight, you have the ability to swing downward, which is great for enemies, especially if you're jumping from one platform to the other. You can get an extra hit in, things like that, right? But what it also does is it bounces you back up, and we now have a term called pogoing in Hollow Knight, where you pogo off of enemies, and they actually added that in as ways to traverse certain areas early on. Now, in Hollow Knight, you could go really far into the game and get an item to go through, like, let's say, the acid water. But early in the game, you don't have that, and you don't know where that is. You don't even know that thing exists if you aren't looking at walkthroughs or reading up on it and all that kind of stuff. So they gave you enemies that are indestructible, that are moving back and forth, but you can then pogo off of them to then get to the next location if you wanted to go that route with it, right? So I think the big thing is big map, open map, platforming for sure, and then abilities that do a lot more than what they say they do, but you learn it from exploration and just trying out new things. I would say that kind of like sums up a Metrovania to me.
You brought up a good point with a lot of these games really have the same kind of abilities to screen mask. And it's cool because even though they're the same kind of genre, Metroid and Castlevania do feel kind of different in a lot of different ways. I don't know about you, but between the two, I was more always of a Castlevania person. I barely have played any Metroid games. I remember playing Super Metroid as a kid, never got super far. Still playing my way through the Prime Remaster. Haven't gone around to finish it because I've been distracted by too many other small games that have come out. But other than that, like, I look at Castlevania and I'm like, oh, well, I've beaten, Symphony of the Night. I've played a bunch of the Game Boy Advance and the DS ones, and I've played the N64 version. Like, Castlevania has always been my kind of like favorite. And I mean, I guess really the difference is that I feel like there's more abilities that feel different. Whereas I feel like with Metroid, it always just kind of felt like this missile is now a plasma bomb. Like, unless Metroid games are different in a lot of ways, but from what I've always played and kind of seen, I'm like, there's not a whole lot of like difference. And with Castlevania, I like that the secrets, everything just kind of feels like, I don't know, you're finding stuff. And when I look at a lot of Metroidvanias, I always can tell when they really take more inspiration from Castlevania to an extent. Just the way either they play or the weapon selection. And it's interesting because, I mean, I feel like both games are very similar, but if you really like pick it apart, I feel like there's some really like unique differences between them.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, there's definitely more. I feel there's more story beats in Castlevania games than there are in Metroid. Metroid is kind of the same. I kind of feel bad saying that because there is a story to Metroid, but
Yeah.
it you kind of have to like look for it, right? Whereas with Castlevania, it almost feels like the story's baked in already, right? I mean, it's Dracula, it's Alucard, right? Like there's so many things that we're already so familiar with the back lore and all that good stuff that it kind of fills in those blanks a little bit better. Now,
Hmm.
like me being in, I think I've admitted this before in other podcasts, but the platforming is not my forte. I'm starting to get back into it now and push myself through them and all that, and I'm enjoying my experiencing with them. But the Castlevania games, I've played a little bit, but not a lot to really dive into them and be super versed in the Castlevania world itself. And maybe that'll be the next ones I kind of like try out because they're just so iconic, and I feel like I need to play them to really get a good grasp on everything. But they both, I would say, have you are 100% right that the Castlevania ones have a little bit more variety in the abilities and weapons that you have. It does seem a little bit more interesting in that sense. But I don't know, like everything always has that like core part of it, right? Big map, multiple abilities, and backtracking. I think maybe the biggest thing about Metrovanias in general is just backtracking. That has to be like it almost feels like that without that you don't have a Metrovania. So maybe that is the ultimate definition of it itself, right? It's a platforming game that has backtracking. That's a Metrovania, right? Like it'd be hard to say that there's any out there that don't have that. And if they don't, then it doesn't feel like you're actually doing anything different than just going on something that's like on rails or a regular platformer.
I feel like a lot of newer games in the genre have been trying to do that, where it's less about having to always go back, where it'll just be maybe like one thing sprinkled here and there, which is kind of nice because sometimes backtracking a lot kind of sucks. But it's interesting when you look at like when Metroidvanias kind of blew up. I was gonna say started, but I mean we already know Castlevania and Metroid. But I'm thinking about like the indie scene, right? And before this game, I feel like you were saying, most other games aside from those two franchises just felt like a platformer or an action game.
Mm-hmm.
But Cave Story was kind of the game that brought that combination of the two games, and I feel really created this not revolution, but this revisit to this genre style. And because it came out in 2004, which I was kind of surprised because I didn't know it was that old. I thought it was like later, like 2008, 2010. And I love this game. I think this was actually maybe one of the first indie games I ever played. Amazing game.
I need to play it.
It really does feel like a game captured in time. Like you feel like you're playing a game from the 80s or 90s. But the thing I loved about it is that it told a story and it did it really well, which I feel like it was able to tell a story better than what Metroid did or what Castlevania did in a lot of their games, right? Like Cave Story had a lot of story beats that just kept kind of like adding to it, and you would learn more, and you're like, oh wow, this is like a really interesting world, and you were like really curious what was going to happen. And I remember when I played it, I was like, whoa, like, you know, indie games weren't really big around that time. Like they were just starting. So seeing something like this was just already like fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like it took the combination of both of those old franchises, breathed new life into it, and basically like said, hey, like you can take that style of game, put some new paint on it, add some new mechanics, make it more modern, but keep a lot of the same mechanics as the older like Legends, basically. It's interesting because really when you look at like especially the indie scene, this is a genre that, you know, for anybody that's into indie titles, probably are sick of in a lot of ways, because it's like, you know, if you're not seeing 10 deck building games or 10 roguelikes, you're seeing 10 Metroidvanias being thrown at you.
Right.
At least on Steam. And, you know, it's a fun genre. I love them. I definitely did get burned out by them for probably a few years, just because they started feeling the same. But when you look at how far they've come since Cave Story, it's kind of fascinating. I've been, you know, I played through Ori and the Blind Forest, which I thought was a very beautiful way of telling a story that to me seemed to focus less on the combat and was more about like quick platforming and abilities to open up new locations, right? So it was less of a combat heavy game versus the sequel, which I felt had a bigger focus on that. And then, you know, there's the inspiration in a lot of 3D games, right? Where, you know, some would say Dark Souls is somewhat inspired by Metroidvanias in a way, because you get something, you go back to it, and there's a lot of like progression that comes with backtracking. And, you know, when it comes to 3D titles, I definitely feel like it's harder to say, oh yeah, this has all the trappings of it. Like it has to be, you know, like Metroid Prime games, that's easy to say. But when you look at other titles, a lot of people bring up like Batman Arkham Asylum, Jedi Fallen Order, which to me, I feel like that's maybe the closest in a sense, because there's a lot of platforming in that game. There's a lot of like abilities you get that really open up different areas of the map. And I felt like was a very good evolution to the 3D side of the genre. But yeah, it's crazy. There's so many good games that are in this genre, especially like ones that have become really well known. Right? Like you have Dead Cells, which is probably still one of my favorites when it comes to roguelikes, just because it meshes those two genres so damn well. And that game's so good. But yeah, and I know you finished it recently, but I'm still playing through it very slowly. Hollow Knight's just been breathtaking in a way that I don't know why I didn't play it sooner, because it's got everything I love. And I mean, yeah, it is difficult at times, but it's not as difficult as I was like worried about, surprisingly.
Yeah, Hollow Knight it's now going to have like a very special place in my heart forever. It's the first, I would say, platforming game, first Metrovania game that I have beaten start to finish. And I don't know why I waited so long on this one. Like I kept purchasing it on almost every single platform because I knew I would love this title, but my mind just wasn't letting me really enjoy it because it was a platforming game, right? Platforming games are my kryptonite basically. And it's fantastic. The amount of exploration that's in it is great. The ability to travel and the movement of everything is just super amazing. It just feels really, really good. And it's nice to see the amount of love that game has gotten, like, because it really does deserve it, right? Like it's such a fantastic title, and the artwork in it is beautiful. It is very challenging at times, right? But the amount of just play that is in these titles is pretty amazing when it comes to being able to traverse the map and play around with different abilities and kind of figure out what new things you can come up with, especially with like the charm system. You can go really, really far with it, which is really fun, where you don't really know what kind of combos you're going to get. And actually, it does something that I think is great that a lot of games don't do, which I think is kind of frustrating, where there's a couple of charms that will like extend the reach of your nail or your sword. And this game actually stacks that reach. It doesn't tell you how far it's actually extending it. But if you actually like look into it and you can see it in the animation, you can stack all of those things that expand the reach of your nail and make it go pretty damn far. It's like a plus 40% if you get all of them on there.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So most games, right, like they don't stack. This one does. And I do like that aspect a lot. It does make it really fun, actually, right? So I don't know. There's a lot to this, and there's a lot of different types of games in this genre. And, you know, maybe Castlevania is not for you. Maybe it's a different kind of pace, right? Like, but there's so many out there that have that same spirit behind them that are just really enjoyable to play. And I really would recommend Hollow Knight to anybody at this point. No matter what kind of games you enjoy, Hollow Knight has something for everybody. I mean, if you're a Dark Souls fan, well, these bosses can get hard as fuck, right? Like they can get really, really challenging at times. If you're a platforming guy, there's stuff in there for you too. And you like bringing up the White Palace, which is a completely optional area in Hollow Knight, takes every single thing you know about movement, about being pixel perfect, about like perfect times to dashing and knowing how long your dash is and timing thing. Like it's all right there in that one area. So if you're looking for like a wonderful like platforming challenge, there you go. Right? Like it took me a long time to get through that part. Not gonna lie, but it is really, really cool, and it's totally worth it for the charms you get, especially if you're looking for story, because there's like little hints at story as you're going through with the characters you meet, right, and like their little like backgrounds and what they talk about. But there's not much there, and you could run through the whole game without getting any kind of story beats whatsoever and not paying attention to that, and still have a wonderful experience. But me coming in as it from mainly playing story-driven games like RPGs and all that, having that available, it made it a much better experience for me. It made it a lot more interesting and just something amazing to go through. So yeah, definitely would recommend that game. And it's one of those that I had no idea how long I was playing it for or how well I was doing. I was just going through it, and I ended up playing that game for 36 hours. And like I've said, I usually fall off of platformers very, very quickly because I can't do pixel perfect. But there was something about Hollow Knight that just kept bringing me back. And maybe it was like the perfect balance of the platforming itself to the interesting combat and just the scenery and being able to go to different worlds and realms and see how like the Queen's Garden looks compared to, you know, the Soul Sanctum, right? And like there was enough that is one thing I will say about like some Castlevania games is that the sceneries tend to kind of look the same after a while, but Hollow Knight showed us that it doesn't have to. It can be something a little bit different, right? And it can be pretty gorgeous to look at, actually. So that is very cool. And one thing too, I would say is like I started thinking about it from a game design perspective of why are these games like they seem to be quote unquote easy to make because a lot of indie developers like their first title seems to be like a Metrovania for a lot of people. And when you think about it, right, like you're really just making one map. It's a giant map, but you're really just making one map. And then you just have to plan out the kind of traversal stuff and what abilities are they going to have at one certain point or not. And so really from like a old school gameplay perspective, you're making one scene, one world that people have to go through. So I'm almost wondering if that's the ultimate draw, where instead of making different levels, which can feel daunting because then now you need to figure out how to connect those levels, Like at least with like stuff like Super Mario Brothers, right? With each world that it has, you'll have 5 like desert worlds. You'll have like 5 underwater ones, right? Like that's the connecting factor between them. But with this, you just make one world. This is the one area that you have to get through. And then it's up to you as a designer to create interesting ways to traverse it using all of the different abilities, which could be kind of cool. So I don't know. Like I'm wondering if it's easier. It might not be because you have to then think about all the abilities, but there has to be something as to why this is such a common game with indie developers, right? Like I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that makes it that this is one of the first that they always end up making.
I think because platformers seem to be easy to make, but also because there's so many abilities and different things you can throw into it, right? Like think about if you make a traditional adventure game, like yeah, you could have some kind of biomes or some kind of differences, but you're probably going to hit more in resources and take more time to flesh out a world. Whereas a Metroidvania, to an extent, it's just a pure platformer, which should be easy to make. You just change, the graphics and everything for different regions of the world map. But being able to allow the developer to play around with abilities and enemies and all this kind of stuff, like I feel like it gives a very high variety in what a developer can do, and maybe show off things in it that might inspire their next title. Or, it could be just them catching the hype train and hoping to make a stash and put it into the game they really want to make, as it's kind of rare to see sequels to these kind of games nowadays.
Yeah. And I think one big major thing too, I don't know about you, and I think you're probably in the same boat, but every time someone says they want to make a game, what's the first thing they want to do? Make like a big giant open world game with everything in it, right?
Yeah.
Well, you need to figure out how to pace that and connect things and make things work. Well, why not do it in 2D? And why not do a Castlevania style game or a Metrovania? Because it definitely needs to have a proper flow to it. So you still you're learning how to make a game and how to produce it and go through all that whole process while still making something kind of big and expansive and go on that exploration side of things. So I'm wondering if maybe that's like the trade-off there. Because so many people want to just make a kitchen sink game, right? Where it's freaking everything all at once. And they don't know how to pace it and, calm down a little bit. So maybe these Metrovania games are like the new way of doing that, where we can kind of pace ourselves, but we can still throw a lot at you. And we're learning a lot of cool things along the way. So maybe that's more the reason why. But I don't know.
I think that could be it. Actually, something that's kind of coming to mind, and I was gonna maybe bring up some titles that kind of take that Metroidvania and do something different with it. But first, I'll segue into this little section that one of my favorite modern Metroidvania titles has really kind of evolved with every title in its franchise by doing other things in that same world. But the SteamWorld Dig games, SteamWorld Dig 2 especially, was just, oh my god, I loved it. It, instead of giving you you're in a castle, or you are on a space station, or you're just, you're in same kind of map where you have to go through, discover, get your percentage up, woohoo. This game did it different. You're mining, you're going down, and there's cave systems and stuff the further you go down. And yeah, there's story beats that are in between the empty caverns where you kind of learn more about the world. But there's something about these two games that I just loved. Like, if a SteamWorld Dig 3 came out today, I would be playing that right now, right this instant. You know, it's, for some reason, like, those games are just so damn good to me. Like, I love them. The only thing I hate about it, they're short. I feel like for a Metrovania, they're surprisingly pretty quick to beat. And I think one thing I really do love about it too is there's a really good upgrade system. So while you don't really get a lot of abilities per se, there's a lot of good upgrades you can do. And I'm a sucker for upgrading my stuff. I love seeing numbers go up. I love clicking a bunch of buttons on menus to make my equipment work and look better. Like, this game just has it all. And speaking of taking it elsewhere, now the developer really obviously has done other games now with SteamWorld. So there's SteamWorld Heist, which is kind of a it's a strategy game, but it's like, you know, not like grid based. It's more like, you have kind of like a turn based, not an RPG, but it's in a vein like that. It's something totally different. And they actually just dropped a demo last Next Fest called SteamWorld Build. And this is a game I'm very interested in because I love city builders, and it takes a lot of inspiration from Dig in the sense that while you are building a town above ground, you are also digging underground for resources and other things. And the combat in that game is a tower defense game. So it's interesting seeing what started out as like Metrovania games. They've really shown that they can make a lot of other titles, experimenting, trying different things. And I love that. I think it's cool seeing a studio be very versatile and seemingly doing it really well. Like, I think Heist got pretty decent reviews and people seem to really like this build demo. So I'm kind of excited where it goes. I'm hoping for a Dig 3 eventually. But like that was really cool. If there's one Metroidvania that I think to me does something so damn different, but it's so good in the sense that it's not super dark, it's not super pretentious, it's very child friendly, but at the same time, like, it's got very precise platforming. And when you hear the premise of this game, you're kind of like, how does it work? Because it's not your typical game. But Yoku's Island Express. I played this game for the first time. Oh, God, like before the pandemic, I think 2019. And I love this game. I swear by this game. If anyone wants a very interesting, unique experience when it comes to these type of games, I always recommend this game because I love pinball, and this is Metroidvania meets pinball. Basically, your platforming and everything feels like a giant pinball map, right? Like, you have a town, you have your little hub that you go back to, and while, yes, there's normal platforming, in order to get all around the map, you know, there's little holes and little ramps and little spins. Like, this game is so damn good, and it does it so differently. You know, you get your abilities. There's not a whole lot. I mean, what can you do with a ball, right? You're basically like, you're a postman for this island, and you're carrying around this ball, and it's adorable, and it's pretty short. It's pretty easy unless you're going for like secret stuff. But to me, I feel like this game combined two genres that I never thought was possible, and any chance I get to talk about this game, I love it. I mean, hell, it even won like a BAFTA for a debut game, which is kind of crazy considering the premise of it. But yeah, this is always a game that I'm just like, I love it, and it makes me want to
It
see
looks pretty
more weird combinations. I mean, especially the pinball. I know people have done more with that, with like Rollers of the Realm and some other titles, but I don't know. I think this game actually did a really good job at merging the two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like pinball is kind of like a underused ability or style nowadays. But there are some games out there that are really pushing it and making it interesting again and showing us that, that pinball physics that, I mean, who doesn't love pinball, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you play it, you're just kind of hooked in for a while and you're like, damn, I could do better. Because there's always that element of like chance. It feels like almost like gambling, but then there's strategy to it as well, right? Like it's very interesting because there is obviously a skill level to it. Like this game, like Yoku's Island Express wouldn't exist if it wasn't some sort of strategy behind pinball itself, where you can actually control where the ball is going if you're paying attention enough, right? So it is very interesting to see this used this way, and it is very cool. I mean, it is a beautiful looking game and very what's the word? Innovative in the way that it uses the pinball physics or the mechanics themselves. So this is really cool. I do like this one. So this looks like a really just sweet, like kind of turn your brain off and just kind of enjoy the flashing lights and all that good stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. It's like it's not difficult enough where you can just kind of like, I'm gonna roll my ball this way, and it literally just becomes pinball. So if you find pinball relaxing, you're set. If you get stressed out about your balls dropping, then it's not the game for you. But yeah, I'm like, there's so many good indie Metroidvanias that are crazy, like especially just today. I'll shut up after this. I'll get off my soapbox, but the indie world was today for Nintendo, and I mean, there's a new Telsagrad, which I never played that game. I know a lot of people really enjoyed the first game. I felt like, I don't know why, I didn't really think it was a Metroidvania. I thought it was more like a platformer, but people really liked it. And then I think the big one for me that I noticed, and this is a game that I was getting into, but kind of got pulled away from it, was Blasphemous. It's getting a sequel, which is cool.
It's already getting a sequel? I feel like that game just came out. Or am I just like way behind?
It came out 2019. So, I mean, wow, for how amazing that pixel art looks, for them to churn out a game that fast, like, yeah, I think that's a little crazy, right? But, I mean, that game, like, it definitely feels like a Souls game mixed with a Metroidvania. Mm-hmm. And I really, 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 really like that game. But yeah, I don't know why I stopped playing it, but it's difficult. It's beautiful. And, this genre is not seeing a stop anytime soon. I'm looking at the upcoming games in this genre on Steam, and I'm like, damn, and some of them look really damn good and different, which is cool. Mm-hmm. We're not getting the same old, which is nice.
Yeah, that is nice. So there's a couple games that I've been checking out lately after my Hollow Knight experience. I've definitely been wanting to play more platforming games, more Metrovania games in general, just because I feel like those are a style or genre that I've really missed out on, right? And there's a couple games that have really caught my eye, and one of them I started playing was Greek, and it's GREAK for people that might have seen it. The artwork is gorgeous as well. It's like very well drawn. It looks like hand drawn graphics, and it reminds me, like, it kind of gives me that drawing vibe of Hollow Knight, but brighter, right? And it's it even says that I'm almost like on the fence of calling it a full Metrovania because it's more of adventure platforming style-ish, but I guess that's kind of the same thing, right? That's the hard part for me when it comes to Metrovanias is that there's a lot of different kind of styles of them out there, right? But with Greek, one of the interesting new mechanics behind it is that you actually control 3 characters at the same time. And each character has their own specific abilities, which I find very fascinating because you have to be able to switch between everyone. Everyone has different traversal abilities, right? Like the Greek, the main character, he has his double jumps and his basic sword, and he's very much the young up and coming knight hero type, right? Which I find really interesting. You're trying to save your sister, but your sister is a magic user who has like float mechanics like Princess Peach, right? So you're able to traverse that way, and there's certain areas that you have to float across instead of just double jumping because that just won't reach. And then, of course, you have your knight, who is your main fighter, brawler kind of character, who's just like a badass tough guy, right? And I don't know, there's something to this game that is just really gorgeous to look at, and it's very fascinating to play through. And one of the things that I'm actually really enjoying and finding it more fun to just go through the same area that I've been to before instead of just blindly going through the story and just following the road all the way down, right? Is that there's ways to unlock new abilities and new fighting styles in it where you talk to like a swordsman and he says, "Oh yeah, I'll teach you a new move, but first you have to go and kill, 5 of this one type of enemy and then come back to me," right? And there is fast travel in that game once you find the fast travel stones, which makes it a little bit easier. So you're not just completely backtracking the whole time. So it does speed that up a little bit, which is nice. But it is really cool because it just makes you want to find these or go back to the same area because you're like, oh yeah, there's like a whole bunch of these bats over here. I've already been through this spot, but let me just go do this real quick so I can try and get this new ability. And then once you get the new ability, you just want to go and try it and just play with it and see what other things come of it. Like what range does it have? What kind of like, does it give me any more distance? Can I use this some other new way? And I'm almost wondering if that mindset I'm having of testing out new abilities in different ways is because of Hollow Knight and the way that it portrayed its abilities, where almost anything that you can do in Hollow Knight becomes a new way of traversing the map and finding new ways of getting somewhere that you didn't think you can get to before. So like I'm kind of curious if it wasn't for that, would I really be playing this the same way that I am right now? But I don't know. It's a really great game so far. I'm really enjoying my time with it, and it looks really awesome. I mean, visually, it's gorgeous. It's a cool little hand-drawn game. But there's another one that really caught my eye as a new way of doing this because I don't feel like, I'm also not really versed like super heavily in Metrovanias, but this one seems really cool because I don't feel like you see a lot of co-op Metrovanias. And I think that's a really interesting experience since these are mostly single player games, right? And being able to share that experience with somebody now might be really, really cool. But there's a game called Infernax that is out now, and you could play it single player if you want to. That's totally fine. But they do have a co-op option, which I find really, really cool because it's not just 2 of the same characters. When you play co-op, both characters, first player and second player, have very, very different abilities, and you have to play very differently and actually think about one another. So, like, the first player is very short range. They just have the mace, so they can only hit things that are right in front of them. But they also have a shield that actually will block projectiles. Whereas the other character, player 2, who's your squire, has the throwing axes that I think are very, very Castlevania, like super, super Castlevania. But they have banners, which will do different effects for your party. And then player 1 has magic instead of the banners. But player 2 cannot block projectiles. So player 1 can stand in front of player 2 and block like the spears that are being thrown or arrows and stuff like that. while player 2 is throwing axes from the back because they're long range people. So like you start creating a really good synergy between these two players because each one has their specific strengths, and you have to really communicate with each other to try and get through this, crazy land. And you can tell this is very much inspired by Castlevania. Even the way the health looks and the magic, it's that very old school Castlevania, right? Where it's the rectangle blocks in a line. It's just, when you look at it, you're like, yeah, this is Castlevania, 100%. So, but it seems really cool because I don't feel like, it's one thing that there's not a whole lot of 3D Metrovanias. I don't know of that many co-op Metrovanias. And it actually seems like a really fun style of game to play through with somebody else because they could help, alleviate some of the frustrations in certain areas. Or it's just fun to struggle with your friend, right? Like the whole same concept of, Elden Ring co-op. Right? Like who doesn't want to struggle with their friend? It just makes it a much more enjoyable experience when both of you are like, this boss is so hard, and you're both getting just destroyed, or you're able to walk through an area that you typically in Elden Ring is very difficult, but then you're tag teaming somebody and just destroying them and being like, yeah, we're gods, right? Like it's a very cool idea. I do like this a lot. And I would be curious if there's more co-op ones and to try those out because I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's weird how it's not really a thing, but I guess it kind of makes sense why it wouldn't, because it's hard to think about, how would abilities share? How would this work? But it seems like this game really kind of has it planned out really well.
Yeah. And it's funny, this is... So the people who made Infernax actually made Just Beats and Shapes, which is a bullet hell rhythm game that looks 1,000 times different than this title. So it's so funny to see that to this, and you're like, oh, that's an interesting departure from what they've made before. But it's really cool, and you can tell that they have put a lot of thought into how things synergize with one another. What does a co-op experience actually look like, where it's not just both of you have the exact same abilities, you're fighting for the same things. No, like each of you brings different cards to the table, and it definitely makes it more interesting in my opinion. All right, well, that's going to do it for us this week. I hope you guys enjoyed our little conversation here into Metrovanias. There's so many of them out there, and if you haven't played one, try it out. You can't really think about gaming without thinking of Metrovanias. They're everywhere, and they're actually very enjoyable for very different reasons, and they have a little bit of something for everybody. Exploration, combat, action, skills, secrets, all that good stuff. There's a lot in these games. A lot more than meets the eye, honestly. But anyway, we'll talk to you guys next week with the next set of games that we find over the internet, all that stuff, next cool concepts as we dive further into the world of games through the eyes of art. Yeah. Let's be pretentious for a moment. But anyway, we'll catch you guys later. Bye for now.